I just made a video for a cartoon up, and I was talking about it, and I was talking about some of the cars with the bigger anchors or the rockers and stuff like that sometimes short out. And actually there's a real easy solution, as you can just put a little piece of Scotch tape over the actually you only need to do it on one too, just to make it work. So I mean, there's that. But it made me start thinking about the dyno itself, and when I do the videos, you often see me actually holding the car in the dyno. And the reason why I do that is when I first put the car in the dyno and I'm looking to see what the top speed is, I hold it and I want as much shoe pressure as I possibly can get to see what the potential is of the car. So let's say I get the car up to 1.7, holding the shoes like that. And if I let go of the shoes, what's going to be the top speed? Maybe it's 1.5. So that's a lot of lost speed in my mind. And it may actually be a little bit different when you put it on the track, so that's what I'm saying. But if I can get the speed as close to the 1.7 as I can without holding the car on, the happier I am. And from my experience, it seems the better the car runs. So that's why you often see me with the car on there and I'm holding it, one way or another to try and get the best speed out of it. The other thing I do, and the reason why I hold the car is, especially with the slip-on silicones, there is a much harder tire. And so I hold the car basically to listen and to feel and to watch for if it bumps, basically, is the tire round? How's it going to run on the track? Without holding, you can see there's some, but it's moving so like that. So if I can just hold it, I can feel it, and I can hear it. So to me, this car is faster than the other one, but if I could sand these cars are hard to sand. I'm going to have to try some other tires. But, so that's the other thing I use the dyno for. And not sure if people realize too, you got 4 screws here that you can use, and you can adjust them up and down. Let's see here. So you can turn the screw down and leave it flush and not worry about it. So that's, hard to work left-handed. But these screws are magnetic. So basically when you put the car on there, you can raise the screws up some so that you get more downforce on the car to hold that car steadier and hold it down and create, a little bit better tire to dyno contact. So that's another great function on the dyno that you have. And I think everybody knows with the 2.0 that you have the switch back here to kick it down to 5 amps. That switch though has a fuse that's self-resetting if it gets too hot. So if you leave the car on there for too long, at 5 volts, it doesn't come in when you're really dealing with the standard voltage. Just only if you kick that switch down to 5 volts. That's couple features of the unit. The other feature I really like with the dyno is the amp meter. You can throw the amp meter in here. Plug it in. Okay, so the amp meter is going to sit itself, usually, yeah, somewhere around 5 or, yeah, so 47. So I just use the number 5.0. So when I'm looking at the amp draw, I can kind of take that away because the dyno itself is what's using the amp draw that you see. And I use that basically when I take a car and it's got the tabs on it. I can take the car and I can hold the car upside down. So the axle and everything else is going in the proper direction. And this lets me do a couple things. Like if I put new brushes in or whatever, it'll let me look at the brushes to make sure, are they spinning or are they not spinning? So I can play with the brushes to, if I'm going to put an X mark on the brushes, you know, maybe I got to go a hair deeper to stop them from spinning or whatever. But normally, what we're going to do is pretend that this is my, what do you call that thing? Soldering iron. And what I'm doing is I'm holding the car down. And I've got the car on. I'm using the soldering iron, and I hold it usually over the edge by the teeth to try and warm it up a little bit, and then I'll move it in front of the teeth. And by doing it this way, one, the heat is rising up, not into the chassis. That's why I do it that way. But hopefully it softens the gear, and it usually does. And then that gear forms a little bit better with the teeth on the driven gear, or the pinion gear, or whatever you want to call it, pinion gear. And then you get a smoother contact. And what I can do is I can actually do that, and when I'm doing that, I can watch. So if I go over here and bring this in, I'm looking at my amp readings. So watch, and it plays around a little bit. But once you gotta let the car warm up, that's the first thing you gotta do. Before you do anything to really see anything, you gotta give it, 1 to 2 minutes of warm up, for T-Jets. It's just the way it is. And then you should see the amp draw that the car has, so on and so forth. And once you got the amp draw, and you're heating up this gear, and you see that your amp draw does not reduce anymore, then I use soldering iron to watch the amp draw on the meter drop. So that's, the same thing with anything else you do. You can use the amp draw to see if you're making that car more effective. You put it on there, you let it warm up, you test it, and everything's good. You know what the amp draw is. You take that car off, you lap in the gears, and after you're done lapping the gears in, you should be able to put it back on the dyno, and you should be able to see the amp draw drop. If the amp draw does not drop, you did something wrong. It may sound smoother, but something's still not quite right. So you got to make sure you clean it up well after you do that. So those are just some of the features of the dyno that helps me a whole lot to determine what's going on. So again, the amp draw and the speed. And a lot of times, even without doing anything, when you put the car on a dyno, you can look at the speed and the amp draw And as the car warms up, you will see the speed increase and the amp draw reduce. Because to a degree, to lower the amp draw, the more efficient that car is running. And that's why you're looking. Why these things are important to look at and to pay attention. And my suggestion is to record everything. When you go to a track, you record, what your sittings are, what your chute sittings are, So I used the SRM tool to check my shoe tension. Works great. That's what I use. N-lines and T-jets. Record what you're using. Sometimes if things are different for different tracks, I may have in a tube different springs or even different springs in shoes. And one of the tips there is to maybe color code, say on your cars, so on the tube I'll write, car number 1 and color one shoe and one spring black, so I know it goes on the left side, for example. So those are just things, and just record everything. Do I do that? Nah, I'm ADD. I forget too many things, so I don't record. Do I know what should be done? Yeah, I do. So I know all this stuff. You should record all these things. The other suggestion, if you got cars that you're not going to use in a while, T-jets, take the brushes out. Sit the brushes in a tube with a piece of tissue paper to absorb any moisture off of the brushes. You can even mark on the round side of your brushes and put a little dot or color on the brushes so you know what side either faces the front or the center, so that you put the brushes in the same way you took them out. Then you don't have to wait for them to break in. So those are just little things you can do to make life easier in a way. I think that's it for now. Thanks.